Let us continue. Cool. Art. Oh, I need to lower it on my end once again. I always forget that. Yeah. Okay, George. Do we get a George, Ava, and Hideyoshi? Yeah, see.
やっぱり明日も丸一日こんな天気みたいだね。
やれやれ。今日の日中が嘘のようだぜ。
True. Actually, let me before we do this, let me just once again check if there's anything new here. I mean, I doubt. Beatrice the Golden. Oh, right. Yeah, nothing there. And yeah, nothing beyond large Japanese numbers. And characters. Not seeing anything, at least for now. Although I'm just, once again, quickly going over them. There could be stuff. But we do have some room for characters. And this could always, like, they could always change the box aspect ratio, like make it larger if there is to be more cast later on. Okay, let's continue. George, Aniki, and I were killing time in front of the parlor television. Okay. At that point, Jessica returned. Hello, Jessica. You had a great scene last time. Her face was still blank, but it looked like she had calmed down a little since she had left.
マリアはまだ肖像画前？
いや、さっき戻ってきて、今はそっちのソファーで寝てるぜ。マリアにはもう遅い時間だもんな。
Looking at the clock, it was a little past 10 p.m. Yeah, the day is almost over. Even if we were going to stay up all night, it was about time to head back to our room.
一応うちのおふくろが屋敷にも部屋を用意してくれたんだけどよ。どうする？
僕はゲストハウスに戻りたいかな。
Okay.
親たちの様子を見る限り、僕たちはお屋敷にいない方がいいと思う。
俺も同感だぜ。子供は邪魔せず引っ込んでろって感じみてえだからな。おとなしくそうするさ。
Sure. After we discussed that, Auntie Rosa came into the parlor. She was looking all over restlessly, probably trying to find Maria.
ローザおばさん。マリアならそこのソファーっすよ。
ありがとう。すっかり眠っちゃってるわね。ベッドに移さないと。
よかったら僕がベッドまで背負っていきましょうか。
ありがとう。助かるわ。
Good guy, George.
ジョージ君たちはゲストハウスに戻るの？それとも夏日姉さんが用意してくれた部屋に泊まるのかしら？
今話し合ってました。
True. We'll be heading back.
ゲストハウスへ戻ろうかって話になったところです。
そう。ならマリアも一緒にしてあげてもいいかしら。いとこのみんなと一緒の方がきっと安心できると思うしね。
Seems reasonable, I guess. Although I don't know. You guys had a fight today, so I'm not sure if she would want to sleep with you. Yeah. It seemed that in the shadow behind those words, there was some regret that the adults, herself included, had deeply hurt Maria's feelings.
任してくださいよおばさん。何しろこっちにゃマリアをあやすことに関してはエキスパートがいるっすからね。
それは僕のことかい？
Yes.
僕だけじゃ無理だよ。みんなでだよ。
そうだぜ。バトラだってあんなにもマリアと意気投合してふざけ合ってたじゃねえかよ。
As we said this, Auntie Rosa smiled, looking truly happy.
みんな ありがとう。私たちの話し合いはだいぶ遅くまでかかりそう。
Oof, that's gonna be rough. I wonder if we're gonna get a whole ass scene of them discussing this.
だから申し訳ないけどマリアをみんなにお願いするわ。
おーいマリア、熟睡か？ゲストハウスに戻るぞ。
Maria muttered something indistinct, as if answering, but then rolled over and fell back asleep. It'd be like that. It looked like she was sleeping deeply.
すっかり寝込んじゃったようだぜ。起こすのは悪いな。
僕が背負うよ。
That's a kind of a weird angle for you, but sure. Makes you look more sinister, especially with the clouded glasses, but yeah. Maria's body was much lighter than it looked. George Aniki picked her up and pulled her over his back. It was raining hard outside, and Aniki couldn't hold an umbrella and carry Maria at the same time. It looked like Auntie Rosa would come with us as far as the guest house to help out. However, when she heard Uncle Krause's voice call out to her, she had no choice but to return. Oof.
困ったわね。
True.
もう戻らないと。
Bye bye, Rosa. See you in the morning. Assuming you're not dead? I feel like there's gonna happen. I feel like there's gonna be a murder tonight. I feel.
皆さん、ゲストハウスまでお戻りですか？
Maybe even multiple. Yeah, Shannon. Do you wanna come? After we left the hall, on the way to the entrance, the door to the servant room opened and Shannon-chan stepped out.
だいぶ暗くなっておりますので、私がご案内させていただきます。
Thank you, Shannon.
ちょうどよかったわ、シャノちゃん。ジョージ君がマリアをおぶっていてくれるの。
Yeah, would you mind holding the umbrella?
傘をさしてあげてくれないかしら。
はい、かしこまりました。
If George and Shannon truly do have a thing going on, this is good. They do have it would be the lover's umbrella, kinda. Shannon-chan brought umbrellas for each of us and a flashlight to guide the way. As we opened the front door, the downpour was quite terrific. It looked like we wouldn't have any spare time to take a pleasant walk and enjoy the nighttime rose garden. Yeah.
兄貴、重くねえか？俺が背負うぜ。
大丈夫だよ。マリアちゃんくらい背負えるよ。
本当にありがとうね。マリアをよろしくお願い。
わかりました。じゃあ、おやすみなさい、おばさん。それでは、お送りしてまいります。
ええ、よろしく。
Auntie Rosa saw us off.
マリア、
Yeah.
いつもごめんね。
Those sound like very I mean, first of all, very apologetic words, but also those sound like dying words. Rosa's mumbling voice didn't reach the person in question, nor anyone else, but disappeared beneath the sound of the rain. Yeah, it's raining real hard. I hope it isn't too loud on your guys' end. After cutting through the rainy rose garden, we arrived at the guest house.
俺がマリアを背負って立候補すりゃよかったぜ。そうすりゃ傘をさしてくれるシャノンちゃんのでっけえお胸を二の腕でたっぷり堪能できたってのによ。
My guy.
そんなつもりじゃないよ。誤解だよ。
そうしないと
ジョージ様が濡れてしまうと思いまして。
Sure, Shannon, sure.
ほーら、バカなこと言ってないで入るぜ。
After being nudged by Jessica, Shannon folded up her umbrella and went into the guest house.
お召し物を濡らしてしまった方はいらっしゃいませんか？タオルを用意いたしますが。
そこまで気を使わなくていいぜ。ありがとうよ、シャノンちゃん。
Thank you, Shannon.
そうだ、僕たちはこれからトランプでもして少し遊ばないかって話なんだけど、よかったら少し一緒しないかい？
I feel like she's gonna say no.
あれ、今日のシフト、深夜勤は誰になってんだ？
親族会議中は特別シフトになってたと思いました。少し変更も出てるみたいなので、ちょっと確認してきます。
ああ、わざわざ屋敷に戻らないとわからないんなら無理に。
大丈夫です。ゲストハウスの使用人室でわかりますので。
Okay, that's cool.
ちょっと失礼しますね。
Shannon-chan gave a quick bow and went into the guest house servant room. The rest of us headed for the cousin's room and put Maria in the bed for the time being. Maria was sleeping very deeply, and there was absolutely no sign of her eyes opening. We got some drinks out of the room's refrigerator and spent some time playing cards while drinking. Okay. Knock knock.
あれ、カノン君？
Hello, Canon.
源氏様までこちらに。
Uh-oh.
今夜のシフトはどうなっているのでしょうか？
クラウス様の命令があってね、シフトの大掛かりな変更があったんだよ。
ゴーダがお屋敷の深夜勤に変更になった。
Okay, well, that's not suspicious at all. Take everyone else out and just leave the one that Kraus has direct relations with.
シャノンとカノンはゲストハウスの深夜勤。私と熊沢はゲストハウスに泊まるようにとのご命令だ。お前も今夜はこのままこちらにとどまるよう。たった今電話があった。
Okay, well, based on this, based on this character roster, with us, this cast being in the guest house and the rest being in the normal mansion, I feel like none of us here are gonna die. So, Gohda, probably gonna die then.
ずいぶん大掛かりな変更ですね。お屋敷とゲストハウスの当番がまるっきり逆になってるじゃないですか。
Originally, Shannon and Canon had been given the night shift in the mansion, while the night shift in the guest house, where all of the relatives were staying, had been assigned to Gohda, who had an abundance of experience in entertaining. Kumasawa had been scheduled to stay in the guest house, while Genji had been scheduled to stay in the mansion. However, it seemed that Kraus had suddenly ordered that the schedule be modified. Yeah. The shifts at the guest house and the mansion had all been reversed, and Genji was spending the night in the guest house.
多分ベアトリーチェ様の手紙のせいだろうね。
Definitely.
多分ってどうして？
あんな怪しげな手紙が現れたらクラウス様が僕たちを疑うのは当然だからね。親方様直属の僕たちを極力親族会議の席から遠ざけたかったんだろうよ。
Makes sense, makes sense. Genji, Shannon, and Kanan were all permitted to wear the Ushiromiya family crest, the one-winged eagle, as the servants who served directly under Kinzo. Okay, well, that finally got cleared up. Not that it really mattered too much, but yeah. Nice to know why some have it, some don't. Of course, since they were working for the Ushiromiya family, they had to obey anyone's orders, but their only boss was Kinzo. Since only Kinzo held the right to employ them, even Kraus could not have them dismissed of his own accord. Because of this, they were often viewed by Kraus and the others as Kinzo's underlings, and shunned. Yeah, understandably so. And in reality, Kinzo would seldom let anyone other than them enter his study. You could probably call this sudden shift change a clear expression of that sense of distrust. Considering the time Kinzo had left to live, this would definitely be the last family conference before the problem of the inheritance would come up. On top of that, the mysterious letter that claimed to be from Beatrice had dropped in out of the blue. Kraus definitely wanted to keep Kinzo's loyal subjects away from the table of such a delicate and important discussion, true?
ではすまんが、私は向こうでくつろがせてもらう。
Good night, Genji. Do you need anyone to sleep with you? I'll volunteer.
もし何かあったらすぐに呼ぶように。
I kind of want to see Genji in, I don't know, your classic pajamas and then a nightgown hat thingy, sleeping with like a teddy bear in his arms.
今夜のお客様は特別だ。
Spooky.
はい、かしこまりました。源氏様。
Genji nodded back and went behind a screen, took off his jacket, and slowly began to relax after a day's worth of tension.
今お戻りになられたのはお子様方。
うん。親族の方々はお屋敷で会議を。だいぶ長引きそうな雰囲気だったかな。
なら気楽だね。これ以上の深夜になって、しかもこの天気、多分親族の皆さんはお屋敷の方のお部屋にお泊まりさ。
I mean, yeah, but I feel like Battler will be the kind of person to sneak out of his room to do whack stuff. And before George is the only one who does that. I don't know. Sneaks into Shannon's room for some alone time.
多分ね。源氏様がいないから言うけど、ゲストハウス行きになって、ちょっと嬉しかったかな。
I'm sure you are, yeah?
どうしてだい？意地悪な奥様やエヴァ様から離れられたから？それとも別の理由があるのかい？
Yeah?
別の理由なんかありません。
Definitely. Not even a single Shinpachi-shaped character.
そっか。なら二人で深夜勤を頑張ろう。よろしく、姉さん。
姉さん。Cute.
私ついさっきお子様方にお部屋で遊ばないかとお呼ばれしてて。
Shannon hung her head apologetically and made uncertain glances toward Kanon's eyes. Kanon didn't try to meet her gaze and spoke curtly as he sighed. It looked like he didn't plan on indulging his sister.
ダメだよ。深夜勤を仰せつかってる。それに僕たち家具には遊びのお誘いは必要ない。
I guess. The question is that even if it's not necessarily is does that necessarily mean that you can't do other stuff? Do you need to always be on standby if not doing anything necessary?
わかるね。
I mean, I don't. I clearly don't. Maybe they'll explain it at some point during the game.
そんなことわかってます。
Shannon dropped her shoulders slightly. She had already expected that Kanon who considered rules to be very important, would probably say something like that. But even so, she was a little discouraged. As Kanon turned the pages of a logbook, he spoke without facing Shannon.
なら、お子様方お待たせしてしまってるね。深夜勤に当たってしまったから、ご一緒できないと謝ってこなきゃ。行ってきなよ。
There we go. Kanon is a bit of a tsundere, it seems.
私謝ってくるね。
Yeah, just apologize. And maybe stay for an hour or so. Shannon hurriedly stood from her seat before her brother's mood could change, gave a quick bow, and flew out of the servants' room. Good. As he watched her disappear, Kanon took a single deep breath. Genji's voice came from beyond the screen. Uh-oh. Genji's chill. Sorry, Genji, didn't mean to speak over you.
私がここにいるからお前も行くといい。
Okay. Thanks, man.
源氏様、誘われたのはシャノンだけです。僕は別に誘われては。
その場にいなかったからお声をかけられなかっただけだ。
Yeah, I feel like that's true.
言えばお前も誘われている。たまには子供らしく遊んでくるといい。
Dot dot dot.
いえ、僕には必要ない行為です。人の子には遊びも必要でしょうが、僕らは家具ですから。
そうか。
姉さんだって家具です。人のふりをしたって後で苦しむだけなのに、僕はそれが分かっているから人に近づきたくないだけなんです。
Genji did not say anything after that. A few moments passed, and then he stood up, used a pot of hot water to make some hot chocolate from powder, and served it to Kanon as well. Thank you, Genji. My main man.
そりゃ本当かよ。
Okay, Battler. Yeah, like I do understand the furniture being furniture from the sense of like you guys are clearly very much in the hands of Kinzo and you need to do whatever he asks and he has some kind of a plan and you shouldn't deviate from that. So like I understand from that sense, but I don't know if there's like any hidden meaning that hasn't yet been explained about being a furniture.
そりゃ知らなかったぜ。
Didn't know what.
バカ、声が大きいぜ。マリアが起きちゃうだろ。
Battler was so surprised that he yelled obnoxiously and scattered his cards everywhere. His voice caused Maria to turn over once, but she soon fell back into a deep sleep. Jessica gave him a jab and lowered his voice. And he lowered his voice.
言われてみれば確かにそれっぽい雰囲気はあったんだよな。
Sorry, I need to mute my my thingy. Actually, I'm just gonna do one thing real quick. Okay, sorry, there we go. I got a message that I needed to read. I also muted, so no more random sounds. They really did have that kind of atmosphere, didn't they? You guys talking about George and Shannon?
なるほどな。ジョージの兄貴がな。
Yeah, he got the dog in him. George could not be seen anywhere in the room. A short while ago, when Shannon had come into the room, George had suddenly said that he had forgotten something in the mansion and needed to go back and get it. Shannon had said she would guide him, just like she had on the way to the guest house, and the two of them had departed together. Oh boy.
いや、昔からそれっぽい気配はあったんだぜ。好きなものを聞いてきたり、趣味を聞いてきたりさ。単に関心を持つだけにしてはどうもなんて思ってたらよ。
But now they too are alone. What if like we have been led to assume that there might that like one of the 18 people here might be Beatrice, or like the one doing things. But what if it's like multiple people, like two people together? So what if George and Shannon are the two masterminds behind this? Or maybe they two are just, they're now alone, so maybe they will get murdered. But I don't know. I feel like this whole thing would start out with a single murder, right? I guess this kind of situation would work. They disappear and then we later find them both dead, I guess. I guess we'll see. But yeah, they are off to have sex. Intense, sweaty sex.
そういや、昔から上司の兄貴はシャノンちゃんにやたらと優しかった気がするぜ。なるほどな。
That was a short scene. Oh, do we get George POV? Ooh, never mind then. Rose garden. No, there were multiple white roses. Okay, never mind.
天気予報によると今夜が一番ひどいみたい。
Yeah, never mind. We got to follow them. Cancel everything I just said.
明日いっぱいもやまないらしいけど、もう少しマシになるそうだよ。
そうですか。では、あさってまでは船は来られないかもしれませんね。
Wait, are we getting a sex scene? That would be wild.
ジョージ様の月曜日のお勤めに差し支えが出ないか心配です。
台風が来ていることは知っていたからね。万一に備えて月曜日には予定を入れなかったから大丈夫さ。こう見えてもスケジュールは先読みできるタイプなんだ。
This is true. George puffed out his chest, acting proud. Compared to the normally composed appearance that George always had as the oldest cousin, he now looked amusingly like a little kid. Shannon chuckled at this gap.
さすが、やがては会社を起こされる方はしっかりしていますね。
Praise. New track, I
やっ
guess.
ぱり
I think.
会社を起こすというのは大変だね。お金とかそういうのだけじゃないものがとても大事だって。
I feel like this track will imply that this is just gonna be more of a sweet scene more than anything.
父さんのところで勉強していてわかるよ。会社を起こすということは城を持ち部下を率いるということ。
True.
うちの父さんは秀吉って名前だけあって戦国武将のエピソードがとても好きでね。会社経営の哲学をよくそこから語るんだ。知ってるかい？
I feel like his employees, like, they don't say anything about it, but they hate it. Hate this.
戦国最強の騎馬軍団と恐れられた武田信玄も最初は部下たちの結束がバラバラで統率力をまるで発揮できなかったんだそうだよ。
そうなんですか？なんだか意外ですね。
信玄は部下たちを結束させるため数々のリーダーシップを発揮してるんだよ。
Oh, George, you're such a romantist. Talking about Sengoku period tactics.
例えば戦場で武功を立てた部下に対しすぐその場で報奨を与えたり。普通こういうのは戦が終わってからまとめてやるものだからね。それを戦場の本陣の中にいながらまめにやり続け、 部下の武功を素早く評価し、やる気につなげたというのは非常に大きいことだよ。
Yeah, this is true, I would assume.
それから部下が病気で伏せった時には誰よりも早く駆けつけお見舞いをしたとかね。
Good guy.
武田信玄は戦国最強の騎馬軍団を率いただけじゃない、戦国一の部下思いの人だったんだよ。
そんな方だから部下の皆さんもついてきてくれたんですね。
The truth was, Shannon had already heard this story several years ago. But when George started to tie his father in with one of these stories, he would always be beaming, looking like he was having a great time. Yeah. So Shannon did not interrupt, but merely smiled to encourage him to continue. Yeah, you don't necessarily need to interrupt your loved one. Just let him do what he wants and support him.
確かに資本主義の世界ではお金は力で石垣の高さでもある。でもね、戦も城も自分一人じゃ成り立たない。大勢の部下に支えられ、その力を借りて初めて成立するものなんだよ。それを理解してから父さんの背中を見ると、自分がいかに未熟で、父さんがどれほどの切磋琢磨をして今日を築き上げてきたかがよくわかるんだ。
Yeah, George, you would truly be the ideal person to inherit this family thing.
ジョージ様はお父様のことをとても尊敬されているんですね。
Yeah, like literally no faults in this guy at all, besides, I guess, just being overly nice and overly caring when he's. But I feel like he can be ruthless when it comes to business stuff if need be. So I don't find like any obvious flaws with George at all.
羨ましいです。
あ、ごめん。別にそういう意味で言ったんじゃないんだよ。
すみません。私も別にそういう意味で言ったつもりは。
The two of them awkwardly looked at their feet. Shannon had no parents. Oof. She had been brought up in a welfare institute owned by Kinzo called the Gospel House. Of course. Under the guidance of the honorary director Kinzo, the Gospel House offered excellent students a chance to live a life of service. If they were accepted, they would be able to leave the institute and work as servants for the Ushiromiya family. This was considered to be the highest honor for a student. Servants from the Gospel Fukuin house, yeah, I know. All took names with the character in, on, non in their name while they served. Except Genji. I mean, but he's not from the Gospel House, I feel like. Yeah. But yeah, Shannon and Canon. So, Shannon wasn't her real name. The same goes for Canon. All of the students of the Gospel House were orphans. Or, failing that, people who had been disowned by their parents through some special circumstances. Because of this, the students had been taught to think of each other as their only family. That's why it seemed so natural to Canon to call Shannon his sister. And while only Shannon and Canon were working today in the mansion, there were other servants who worked in the shift rotation named Manon and Lennon, who also inherited the non character in their name. Okay. I wish I knew what the actual kanji has meaning, but I don't know. However, there were not many servants who stayed with the Ushiromiya family for long. It was standard for them to quit after 3 years. So you could probably say that Shannon, who had been working for over 10 years, was a very rare exception to the rule, yeah? Working as a servant for the Ushiromiya family was a heavy burden to bear, but the pay wasn't bad at all. Working for a full 3 years would earn more than what was needed to enter mainstream society. That was why, even though the students realized what a harsh task working for the Ushiromiya family was, they still hoped to be accepted. But in Shannon's case, maybe the fact that she had managed to continue for more than 10 years should not be viewed as her having more willpower than any of the other servants. Maybe it was a lack of courage to say that she wanted to quit that forced her to continue working for those 10 years. The Kinzo, who could not even trust his own blood relatives, those excellent servants sent from the Gospel House, were the only ones he could trust. Because of that, Kinzo would sometimes allow them to wear the family crest as servants under his direct control, and have them work close to him.
もう勤めて10年近くになるんだっけ。だいぶお金も貯まったんじゃないかい？
Probably. If what 3 years allows you to basically become a society member, that probably means that you can gather enough money to buy a house of your own, and then some. So yeah. Basically 3 houses worth, and then some. Maybe 3.5 houses worth of money.
どうでしょう。別に私、買いたいものも特にありませんし、ほんの何百万かあったって、それで残りの人生を過ごせるわけもありませんし。
A few million yen, million, 100k, 10k, so 10 to 50,000 dollars is, yeah, okay, it would be a few million yen. Sure.
目標の額があってお勤めを続けてるわけじゃないのかい？
そうですね。私はこのお屋敷以外に行くあてもありませんし、お嬢様とも他の使用人の子たちとも仲良くやれてますし、奥様には時折お叱りを受けますけど、バラの世話やお屋敷のお掃除も楽しいですし。
でもそれはシャノンちゃんの、サヨちゃんの人生じゃない。
You have learned her true name, Sayo-chan. Okay. I wonder if this will update in her character profile after this scene. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, it isn't necessarily what she wanted to do with her life, but this is part of her experience, so it definitely is part of her life in that sense. Oh, sorry. Shannon cast her eyes downwards when she heard her real name. She understood what George was trying to say and closed her mouth. Oh, was that more like a... maybe a proposal type of a thing that I want to be with you, so this is not what you will be doing with the rest of your life?
僕は成人し、社会人になってからも勉強して分かったことがある。子供の頃、僕らが思っていたほど人生は単調で短くないんだ。
That horrifying thought that everyone has in their student years. Will the rest of my life be like a monotonous, boring, sleep-inducing after-school class, where I endlessly, lazily while away the time, until finally it ends without anything interesting ever happening? However, these thoughts only arise while a person is still an underage student. Compared to a human's life, the time they spend as a student is nothing more than a blink of the eye, just a period before they break out of their shells and cast off their immaturity. I mean, yeah, but also like from our very biased human perspective, it's not, it's true, but it's not true, because the younger you are, I forget what the name of this idea is, but by the time you turn like 20, I think, it feels like half of your life has already gone by, because as kid you're spending more time from your perspective in that age or something. I forget how it exactly goes. So like the years you spend in school have been like 100% of your life in that point of time, so they feel like endless and very long. But when you, I don't know, become an adult, and then way later down in your life, years just feel like they start rolling by faster and faster. The inside of the shell might be a hot, suffocating and boring world, but the world beyond that shell is vast and filled with limitless possibilities. This is true.
君の人生はまだシャノンという殻の中でしかないんだ。君は自分の人生がこの生活のままずっと続いていくと勘違いしてるんじゃないかな。
それは
Interesting break there. Shannon couldn't deny those words. She hadn't been able to find any concrete issues with her way of life, and since she'd never had any desire or goal to change herself in any particular way, she had continued her life idly. And if she were asked whether her life was already fulfilled, she wouldn't necessarily have been able to nod. That may have been a truth she was deliberately averting her eyes from. As long as George did not realize that truth, she would have continued pretending not to notice as her real life slipped away, neglected, bit by bit.
ジョージ様、私はこのままでいてはいけないのでしょうか。
There is no right or wrong, but like he said, there's limitless amounts of possibilities if you just choose. At least in your position, there are quite a lot of possibilities you can go for beyond just continuing as is.
いけないよ。あ、それから今、ルール違反が一つあったね。
Okay, George. George immediately gave a strict answer and then broke out into a mischievous smile. Yeah. Shannon already knew what she was being chided for, and it seemed that it embarrassed her as she hung her head.
僕たちしかいないときは、様はなしの約束だよ。
約束では聞けません。ですが、ご命令でしたら聞かないわけにはいきません。私は家具ですから。
じゃあ、命令だよ。
はい、かしこまりました、ジョージさん。
There we go. As Shannon hung her head, her face red. She said George's name again, this time using son.
それでいいよ、さやちゃん。
A smile rose to George's face, praising Shannon's, no, Saya's small act of bravery. The way they talked with each other gave off the sense that their relationship had already been ongoing for some time. For a long while, as if the weather raging around them didn't even enter their consciousness, two of them talked about the many memories they'd built during their relationship that no one else knew about. Every once in a while, a flash of lightning would attempt to dampen the mood, but it could not sully these moments, which seemed to flush even the roses outside a deeper shade of red. Yeah? Okay.
そうだ。
Okay.
君に見せたいものがあって。
なんでしょうか。
George, who had been speaking eloquently, suddenly started to stutter. From his manner, Shannon, too, understood something. George timidly searched through his pocket for it. Uh-oh. Here we go. It got caught deep in his pocket somehow, and came out somewhat slowly and awkwardly, in the same manner as his speech. A ring, maybe? It was a very small box. A small box covered in a deep blue velvet. Its characteristic shape was enough to make anyone realize what was resting inside. Shannon had been preparing her heart a little, sure of what it must be. But even so, when she actually saw it, she couldn't avoid blushing once more, yeah. George opened the small box, took it out, and held it out for Shannon to take.
これを君に受け取ってほしいんだ。
このような高価なものはお受け取りできません。
受け取れない。
いえ、こんなもの私には過ぎていて。
さよ、これはお願いじゃない。命令だよ。
Yeah, the smirk there. It's an quote-unquote order.
この指輪を受け取って。ね。
I mean, there is ... in between, but yeah.
命令では従わなくてはなりません。
うん、そうだね。いい子だよ。
Aw. Very cute. Shannon, not wanting to show her bright red face, timidly accepted the ring from George's hand, while still staring at the ground. That ring wasn't a simple accessory. It was a noble object, which, since ancient times, was meant to be offered to a special woman with a special meaning. So, while George could order her to take it, he could not order anything beyond that. Anything beyond that would depend not on an order, but on Shannon's, no, Sayo's own will.
だから、ここからはもう命令じゃない。さよ、明日までに言葉でない形で返事がもらいたい。わかるね。
どうすれば。
もうこれ以上は命令じゃないから、僕は君に命令はしない。でも、指輪は指にするものだからね。気に入ってくれたなら、好きな指につけてくれればいい。
Shannon had only pretended not to know. She had already understood what he wanted her to do. But she was standing at a huge crossroads of her life, yeah.
もうこんな時間だね。今夜はこれくらいにしよう。
George faced away from Shannon, seeming slightly uncomfortable.
君に左手につけてほしいと命令することもできるかもしれない。君も命令されればそれに従えるという臆病な甘えがあるかもしれない。でも最後のここだけは君のさよの意志でしてもらいたいんだ。
Yeah, that's a very important line there. Even if it was in quotations an order, it's still something that you would really want the other person to do without having to pretend order.
わかるね。
Or I guess in this case, just actually order, but yeah, even you wouldn't even want them to pretend order or accept it.
だから、それが命令。今夜よく考えて、明日、その返事を見せてほしい。
Tricky bastard. Shannon nodded back. Today was the culmination of their long relationship. This moment had not come as any surprise to Shannon.
そろそろゲストハウスに戻ろうか。これ以上遅いと、みんなを心配させちゃうよ。
すみません。私、その、お屋敷にいようを思い出しまして、その、お屋敷へ行かねばなりません。
Oh no.
こんな時間に本当かな。
George stared into Shannon's face as he laughed mischievously. He had seen through that obvious lie of Shannon's. But imagining how she felt, it wasn't as if he couldn't understand her embarrassment and why she might ask to be alone, yeah. And so George, having understood Shannon's lie and all that was behind it, allowed her to leave. Not bueno, not bueno, that's gonna be a bad thing to do, to let her leave alone. Exactly, that's what's gonna happen to her. Okay, never mind, we got to follow her here. Let me check if any character stuff got updated. I'm at least not yet. Nothing there. How about George? Nope, nothing at least yet. But yeah, that was a very sweet scene, but also incredibly foreboding if we just take it at the face value of, well, not face value, but like if we assume the basic of basics when it comes to foreshadowing or what's the word, when you a trope, right? Like basic trope, like giving characters sudden development, life-changing development just before their death. Yeah, that upped the chance of Shannon or George dying incredibly. But I guess we're following Shannon here, so she's not gonna die on the way here. At least, but who knows afterwards. Shannon entered the entrance hall to the mansion with a tottering gait. Her chest was filled almost to bursting point with a mixture of exultation and uncertainty that she couldn't easily describe. Yeah. After stopping for a second in front of the servant room to take a deep breath and calm her heart, she opened the door. New room. Keys. Inside, Gohda, who had been ordered to take the midnight shift at the mansion tonight, was absorbed in an old, worn-out crossword puzzle magazine. He looked up for an instant to see whether one of the family had come, but when he realized that it was a fellow servant, he returned to his puzzle as if nothing had happened.
源氏様より合田さんのお手伝いにつくように言われてまいりました。
No? Were you? No?
ああ、そうですか。それは助かります。そろそろ戸締まりの見回りに行きたかったのですが、ここを開けてもいいものか困っていたのです。何しろ旦那様方の会合はまだだいぶ続きそうですからね。いつ何時お茶のご用命があるかもわかりませんし。
そうですよね。ではどうしましょうか。私が留守番を。
I feel like he wants to be the one to do the tea brewing. Or rather, take it easy.
ではシャノンさん、申し訳ありませんが、 お屋敷内の見回りをお願いします。
Like I want him I want him dead the most, but I feel like he's the kind of snake who will survive to the very end.
私はここで親族の皆さんのご用命の待機をしておりますので。
はい。
Shannon felt a twinge of annoyance here. Despite the fact that she had come here to help out as a favor, she was being forced to do the job of the person actually on duty, as though it were natural. Furthermore, after one-sidedly forcing that task on her, Gohda had once again gone back to his magazine and had become immersed in his crossword puzzle. Lamp. Looks like a flower. For the time being, as a sign of respect for her elder, Shannon bowed her head, and she left the room to make the rounds. Getting a little angry had enabled her to bring the airy sensation she had been feeling until now under control a bit. Besides, she couldn't show this kind of face to Genji and Kanon. Until her heart was able to calm down, she wanted a little time to herself, and maybe going around the mansion wasn't such a bad way to do that, yeah? Just wander around aimlessly, do mindless, easy tasks, and give yourself some time to calm down and think, maybe. Maybe, who knows. From the dining hall, she began to hear the tumultuous voices of the family's discussion. Someone would speak at great length, and would then be opposed by someone else. That rebuttal would continue. Rebuttal, probably. Would continue in a very long, drawn-out fashion until opposed by yet another person. That kept on repeating. It was as though their displeasure was seeping out through their voices. She had been told to go to the guest house, so it would be bad if she was discovered by Kraus. Thinking that, Shannon quick-footedly slipped by the entrance to the dining hall. I wonder if because of this decision, she missed something crucial, like something that was out of order. And that's gonna come back bite her. Then, inside the mansion controlled by darkness, she began to check that the house was all closed up, following a pre-arranged route. Yep. She walked down the hall, checking that each window was closed. On Rokkenjima, there were no humans other than the family. Fake, there's Beatrice. So, in actuality, closing up wasn't that terribly meaningful of a task. Until Natsuhi had scolded them that this attitude was careless, closing up had not been customary in the Ushirimiya family. The metal fixtures on the completely chilled windows were freezing, and every time she went to check on them, one by one, it felt like the glow in her heart seemed to cool down. Okay, what did you find? Ooh, spooky, mysterious. Beatrice? Beckoning. Curious. Just then, she thought she saw something flickering across the hall. Flickering? Something like that shouldn't be visible beyond the darkness of the hall. Although she thought it was probably her eyes playing tricks on her, she killed her breathing for a brief moment, and, grasping a curtain, she fearfully gazed into the center of the hall. Oh no, are we gonna see Beatrice? However, other than the occasional crack of thunder brightening the hallway, she was unable to glimpse any flicker again. Yeah, it is also very possible that, like we just saw, Beatrice would be able to travel through different areas as a butterfly, because that's here as a design. It must have been her imagination after all, surely. Clueless Shannon. Maybe because she couldn't calm her heart, she saw something that didn't even exist. Okay. Shannon resumed checking the windows. However, in the back of her mind, a certain unnerving possibility had resurrected. It was that which had been passed down amongst the servants who served the Ushurumia main family. That ghost story, in which the mansion had different masters of the day and the night. In which the master of the night, Beatrice, would sometimes fly around the mansion in the form of sparkling butterflies. Come to think of it, hadn't Kanon-kun said that he had once seen it for himself? He got sulky when I didn't believe him and told him he was just seeing things. Could it possibly? Really? The roar of the thunder gave no answer. Intriguing. Are we still in the same POV or George here, maybe? The rose garden. Not seeing the special rose. Yeah? Beatrice's portrait. Midnight clock, maybe, yeah. Okay. I was wondering if I was supposed to click. It's time to begin. Butterfly. So tense. Going through everyone. Yeah. I don't think we saw Maria, did we? Hello, Beatrice. What's up? Spooky. Oh, we're going way... Okay, skip the whole night. We are not allowed to know what happened during the night. The sacrifices chosen by the key. October 5th, the second day. Oh boy. Okay, it's 6 a.m., right? Yeah, 6 a.m. Sunday. I can record for like 50 more minutes, I think. Genji once again tightened his bow tie, and looked outside through a crack in the curtains. Maybe the rain had died down a tiny bit since the previous night, but it didn't look like the thick rain clouds were planning to let any trace of the morning sun get by. Also, I just realized we never saw Shannon go back to the guest house, so that has me scared. The morning was dim and far from refreshing.
やはり今日いっぱいはやみそうにないか。
Okay, well, I mean, Genji is alive, but then again, I suspect that everyone in the guest house is fine.
お待たせしました、源氏様。
Kanon finished checking his appearance and exited the washroom. In a normal schedule, it was rare for anyone to have to suffer going straight from a midnight shift to a morning shift. It was a special system for just the 2 days of the family conference. But then, as long as the typhoon didn't leave today, the relatives' stay on this island would last until tomorrow. Kanon thought that it was best to be prepared for the special schedule to be extended one more day. Whoa, flashbang, okay. The two of them had left the guest house, opening their umbrellas. The rose garden had been devastated by the wind and rain last night. Even though they had spent several days making it beautiful to welcome the guests, it had only taken one stormy night to ruin it. From this angle it looks fine. Kanon sighed. The two headed for the mansion. They were supposed to meet up with Gohda and prepare breakfast. Supposed meaning that Gohda is not showing up. Gohda was such a perfectionist that he would undoubtedly have been up for some time already, and now be in the middle of preparing a breakfast both exquisite and as elegant as glasswork. They reached the overhang by the entrance to the mansion and folded up their umbrellas. Genji took from his pocket a bundle of several keys and used it to unlock the front door. There was nothing on Rokkenjima outside the Ushiromiya family mansion, so there never used to be a custom of locking up. However, Natsuhi had ordered that it be part of their duties to lock up the mansion from around midnight to early morning. Thank you, Natsuhi, for providing us with a possible locked room mystery. And unlocking in the early morning was to be done by the servants who had the morning shift. Since Gohda would begin the preparations for breakfast as soon as he woke up, this task was to be undertaken by Genji and Kanon. Silence had fallen in the mansion, giving the impression that the mansion itself was still asleep. Yeah?
では、朝の仕事を始めよう。
はい。
I'm just waiting for them to discover someone dead. It might not even have happened. I mean, there's a large possibility that someone did die during the night because we just skipped, well, it was the night anyway, so it's not too unnatural to skip, but still. There's a large possibility that someone did die during the night, and that's why I'm just waiting. But we'll see, I guess. We'll see. The two of them split up and began opening the curtains throughout the mansion. If the curtains remained closed, the inside of the mansion would be unable to shake off its gloom, as if it hadn't yet managed to escape the previous night. Yeah, I was thinking that it was more muted, but yeah, lights weren't on really. Kanon, following a well-versed procedure, went around the mansion, opening one window after another without having to retrace his steps once. Or did they open the windows? I didn't actually notice. One or the other. Even with... Whoa, didn't need to do that. Even with this horrible weather, by opening the curtains, it began to feel just a little bit like morning. While doing that, he passed in front of the kitchen. Even though he hadn't yet smelled anything, his empty stomach started aching in anticipation of the scent of Gohda's much bragged about cooking.
おはようございます。
Hmm? He tried to greet Gohda, who he had thought would be preparing the meal inside the kitchen, but Gohda was nowhere to be seen. Am I allowed to make a preemptive fist bump for the death of Gohda? Yes! The kitchen was darkly lit, and never mind the curtains, the ventilation fan wasn't even spinning. It was still cold in the room, without a hint of a flame, and of course, no preparations for breakfast were taking place. Although it must not be allowed to happen, maybe Gohda had overslept. Servants are humans too. They can sometimes fail to wake up or something, and be late as a result. In the rare case of that happening, it was the virtue of a servant to casually smooth the situation over, so as not to cause an unsightly scene, and to make sure that their masters never even noticed that such a mistake happened in the first place. Right, so you guys just start cooking. Kanan took up the receiver of the phone fitted to the wall and dialed the extension number for the room where the servants slept. He couldn't hear that characteristic sound of a dial tone. Uh-oh. Sorry, I was interrupted. He couldn't hear the characteristic sound of a dial tone. Yeah, someone must have cut the wires. Kanan tried picking up the receiver again, but even so, he couldn't hear the usual dial tone. Or maybe it's just a typhoon, but still. He tried dialing again, but it had no apparent effect. Could it be that the lightning last night had caused a mechanical fault and broken the internal telephone lines? The equipment in this mansion was all worn out. Kanan fully understood that even the smallest thing could have caused it to break down. Kanan gave up trying to wake him with the phone and dashed off to the room where the servants slept. Flashbang number 2. But I guess it is morning, so... How long had she slept until? What? How long had she slept until? How long had it been since she had awoken and started lazily staring up at the ceiling? That vague sense of awakening was not his usual morning experience. Her sleep was always light, and she wouldn't even have been able to sleep at all without medicine. To Natsuhi, sleeping was definitely not a happy thing. When she looked outside, she saw that it was still pouring. Interesting that we switched POV when we were trying to go meet Gohda. If she hadn't sensed a tiny amount of light, she might have mistakenly thought that it was still last night. She herself was one of the hosts, so she mustn't wake up later than her guests. Urging herself on, she raised up her body, which still hadn't completely recovered from yesterday's weariness. While she was inside this room, no one would torment her. Her headache wouldn't get any worse than it already was. This room was her only peaceful space, but it's still, yeah, she still has the headache even in this room. Yeah. So when she left, it meant returning to the world of her husband's siblings, probing each other's minds. Then wouldn't it be better to just stay locked up in this room forever? Natsuhi smiled bitterly at this fantasy. She was starting to sound like Kinzo. Yeah, I almost mentioned that, but didn't. Even though most of the time she would call Kinzo names for staying locked up in his own room and taking no notice of anyone. The truth was that she actually longed to do so herself. Hey, she's me for real. Natsuhi gave her head a small shake, and her fantasy was replaced by the reawakening of her usual headache. Time to struggle through another day. Moonlit night. When she reached for the doorknob, trying to leave the room, her hand touched the scorpion charm that she had hung from it before going to sleep the previous night. Maybe it protected you. It was Maria's charm that Jessica had given Natsuhi. If she remembered correctly, Jessica had said something about it having the power to repel magic, and that she should hang it from her doorknob. That's sweet that she actually listened to Jessica. Maybe it was thanks to the charm that at least this room had been protected from her husband's siblings' malice. As she thought this, her mood began to get a little more cheerful.
ジェシカのおかげで少しはゆっくり眠れたということかしら。
That's nice. Then Natsuhi remembered. That's right. Last night I promised Jessica that I would give her a charm of my own in exchange for this one, didn't I? Natsuhi opened a drawer of her dresser and took out an antique accessory case that she had treasured ever since she was a child. Okay. Inside, there were many small objects that Natsuhi had thought were valuable at the time. From amidst those, she pulled out a red pouch. Inside was a small, round mirror about 10 centimeters across. It looked quite old, but the design on the back of the mirror was very ornate, and it felt like something with historical value. At the very least, it looked much more effective when compared to the other charm, which looked like a plastic scorpion key holder. She had heard that this mirror was a spiritual mirror to ward off evil spirits, and she had been given it especially by her grandmother when her grandfather's mementos had been distributed. It has been believed since ancient times that strange powers dwell within mirrors, yeah? Most likely, the way they reflect light created a belief that they also deflect misfortune and malice in the same way. Natsuhi returned the mirror to its pouch. It would probably be a fitting object to hand over to Jessica. We'll keep that in mind. Knock knock. Yeah, we'll keep the little MacGuffins in mind. The scorpion charm and the evil repelling mirror. Just as she was placing it in her pocket, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly echoed throughout the room.
Hi.
おはようございます、奥様。源氏でございます。早朝から申し訳ございません。
今行きます。何事ですか?
No servant had ever come to her this early in the morning, and especially not directly. Yeah, I feel like an incident has happened. Maybe something bad had happened. For example, maybe some fatal oversight had been made during the preparations for breakfast, and the household would be put to shame in front of the guests or something. Natsuhi breathed out slowly, as if getting a head start on the trouble she was surely about to be told of. When she opened the door, Genji once again said a morning greeting to her while bowing deeply. Natsuhi tentatively responded.
おはようございます。何かありましたか?
申し訳ございません。昨夜の落雷で電話機器に故障が出たようです。内線電話が普通になっておりますもので、直接のお伺いになってしまったことをお許しください。
内線電話が普通? それは面倒になりましたね。修理は可能ですか?
残念ながら故障箇所がわかりません。後で業者を呼んで修理させたいと思います。
ということは、この台風が過ぎるまでは修理不能ということですか?
So we are now truly shut off from the rest of the world, unless someone decides to come in or leave during the typhoon, but that's unlikely.
つまり客人たちの滞在中はずっと普通ということですね。客人たちのお世話に支障は
出ないよう最善を尽くします。
結構です。
Yeah, very well.
粗相のないようよろしく頼みます。
Natsuhi let out a small sigh of relief. Yeah, it wasn't nothing. Well, I mean, I guess it is, but it was nothing that she had to worry about too much. But maybe Genji has a bombshell of news to drop on her, maybe? She had been prepared for the worst, but a telephone breakdown wasn't the kind of trouble she was worried about. But then, even this would probably be enough to spark sarcasm from Ava. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Natsuhi gave her head a light shake.
朝食の準備は順調ですか？
それがゴーダの姿が見えません。
That is worrying.
朝食の支度もまだ行われておらず。
なんですって？
Natsuhi was indignant. To her, this was a much bigger problem than the phones not working. And despite that, this piece of information was the part that had been postponed. Why did everything go well most of the time, and then come to something like this when the relatives were visiting? Natsuhi placed a hand to her forehead and shook her head sharply. Oof.
大方朝寝坊でもしているのでしょう。とにかく誰でもいいから急いで朝食の準備を。
What? Natsuhi had exited into the hall and turned around for a second to close the door to her room. The unpleasant thing that she saw there silenced her completely. Yeah? It was an unsettling sight, as if someone had dipped their fingers in dark red liquid and clawed at the area around the doorknob. Uh-oh. As though someone had soaked both of their hands in blood and groped at the door and the knob. Like someone had wanted to stage something like that and left this mark as an awful prank. Yikes. Hey, you should give huge thank yous to Jessica.
悪趣味な。
私も今ここにお伺いして初めて気づきました。後ほど清掃いたします。
大方、趣味の悪い客人の冗談でしょう。不愉快です。実に不愉快です。
Who in the world would pull such a childish and disgusting prank? Natsuhi had a pretty good idea, but of course there was no proof. I wonder if that's assumedly blood marks on the doorknob were not left by the perpetrator, but a possible victim trying to come to Natsuhi for help, but failing to do so. Maybe? We will not know. I feel like we will learn about those things way later on in the game. So even if she pushed the issue, it would just seem as though she was making a fuss about nothing. On the contrary, it would definitely be better for her to say she hadn't even noticed that such a prank had been played in the first place. After he gave the order to have it cleaned and headed off to the parlor with clacking heels. Okay, you two are alive too. When Natsuhi and Genji arrived in the parlor, Eva and Hideyoshi were already there.
おはようございます、皆さん。
おはよう、夏日さん。朝食も合田さんが作るっちゅう話やないか。
True, very true. Nothing off going on here. I was kind of half expecting you to be one of the first to die.
朝から胃袋が大喜びで騒ぎっぱなしなんや。
本家の楽しみは食事くらいがせいぜいですものね。
And mocking the other family members, obviously.
エヴァさんも朝からご機嫌がよろしいようで何よりです。
Natsuhi returned Ava's gaze, which was fiercely competitive even though it was early in the morning, with a wary expression. Ava sure has the energy to keep this up the whole time. Then Kanon jogged in. After bowing in apology to the relatives for running inside the mansion, he approached Genji and told him something in a small voice. Uh-oh.
Kanon, Gohda はまだ見つからないのですか?
Oh, you're just saying that aloud. Okay.
申し訳ございません、奥様。お屋敷内もゲストハウスも回ったのですが、まだ。
一体どこへ行ったというのです。とりあえず今はゴーダより朝食の準備が先決です。至急対応しなさい。
はい。
Kanon glanced at Genji. It looked like he had something else to report, but needed to ask Genji whether he was the right person to say it. Genji nodded and decided to give the report himself.
奥様、ゴーダだけではありません。
Fuck, of course, Shannon.
旦那様の姿もありません。
Never mind. Okay.
主人が?
Well, he is missing, and also we haven't seen Kirie or Rudolph either, or Nanjo, but this is just the family members.
はい。奥様より先に旦那様に朝食の準備がないことをご報告しようと思い、寝室をお伺いしたのですが、お姿がありませんでした。それから旦那様だけではありません。ルドルフ様ご夫妻とローザ様のお姿もありません。
That's a lot more people than I expected, but let's see. Rouse 1, Rudolph 2, Kirie 3, Rosa 4, Gohda 5, and maybe Shannon 6. That would be 6.
ゲストハウスにも屋敷にもですか?
はい。ゲストハウスの部屋にもおられません。
When she had heard that Gohda alone was missing, she had thought that he might have slept in or was loafing around somewhere. But once she heard that several of the relatives were also missing, she began to start thinking a little more optimistically. Last night's family conference might have continued all night, and in fact might still be going on. It would then be imaginable that they had wanted to cool off their heads after being in that stuffy room, and had all gone off on a group walk through the rain. The part about cooling off their heads really sounded like something Kraus would like to say. Probably Gohda had been called to go with them to aid them with something. Gohda was not a man who lost track of time. He had to have understood that if he did not return, the preparations for breakfast would be hindered. So perhaps, as much as he'd like to leave, the atmosphere would not permit him to, and the conference was continuing in that manner even with this very moment. It's kinda unlikely considering that both Hideyoshi and Ava are here, that they would continue without Ava specifically, but you know. Yes, Natsuhi thought this to be an extremely persuasive theory. Natsuhi remembered the illusion that she had felt that morning of being sucked into a continuation of the previous night. And upon learning that the feeling wasn't just an illusion, she once again let out a deep, weary breath. Because the banquet of the filthy vultures circling around Kinzo's property was still continuing.
大方、庭園のどこか、あるいは海岸の方で相も変わらず遺産の話を繰り返しているのでしょう。とにかくゴーダを呼び戻さなくてはいつまでも朝食の準備が整いません。
ってことはなんや、兄さんたちの話し合いはまだ続いとるんか。
She had thought she'd spoken in a small voice, but Hideyoshi had overheard her and managed to grasp the situation. So earlier when she talked about Gohda being missing, yeah, she thought that they didn't hear it, but okay.
兄さんもルドルフもタフね。ローザの場合は若さかしら。私たち夕べの24時過ぎにはもう眠くてベッドに戻らせてもらったんだけど、確かにあの時点でもまだ兄さんたちは熱論を交わしてたわ。男って熱くなると嫌ね。
Natsuhi snorted, her face still blank.
カノン、表を探してらっしゃい。ゴーダを見つけたらすぐに戻って朝食の準備をするよう伝えなさい。
かしこまりました。
夏日姉さん、表とは限らないわよ。お父様の書斎ってことはないかしら。
Doubt.
なるほど、考えられん話やないで。どういう話の流れかはわからんが、お父さんの主催に場所を移してお父さんにも混じってもらって議論を続けてるっちゅう可能性は十分あるやろ。
そのような汚らわしい話題を好んでお父様が書斎へ招き入れることなど考えられません。
あらそう。じゃあ仕方ないわね。源氏さんとカノン君は申し訳ないけど外を探してきてちょうだい。確かに兄さんなら頭を冷やすために外を散歩しようなんて言い出しても不思議はないわ。たとえこんな天気でもね。私はお父様の書斎に行ってくるわ。ひょっとするとそこにいるかもしれないしね。
客人であるエヴァさんにそこまでのご足労はおかけできません。私が行ってきます。朝のご挨拶も兼ねて。
あら、じゃあお願いするわね。
God, I love Ava so much.
でも朝の挨拶を交わしてくれるかは疑わしいわね。夏日姉さんってお父様とは仲よろしかったかしら。
仲が良いかは分かりかねますが、後宮家の跡継ぎの妻を許されるだけの信頼を得ていると確信しています。
ならきっと返事くらいはしてくれるわね。お父様とは朝食くらいご一緒したいの。ぜひ降りてきてくださるよう説得してくれないかしら。私たちはすっかり嫌われちゃってるみたいだけど、そこまで信頼を得ている夏日姉さんの言うことなら聞いてくれそうですもの。
So spiteful.
そこまで短歌を切ってお父様を説得できず一人で降りてきちゃったりしたら、信頼を得ているなんて二度と言えないかもね。
So petty. I love it.
自信はありませんが努力はします。
Natsuhi responded, discouraged. However, knowing King Zou's temperament, she had absolutely no confidence in her ability to bring him out. Ava herself was treating it like a joke, expecting that it couldn't be done. But even so, Natsuhi would lose face if she gave up, said it was impossible for her, and let Ava go instead. Ava's mean-spirited and unreasonable demand caused Natsuhi's tightly clenched fist to shake. When Genji realized this, he softly spoke to her over her shoulder.
奥様、よろしければこれをお持ちください。
Giving her a key, maybe?
それは
Ooh. Genji handed Natsuhi a sparkling gold key of ornate design. It was the key to Kinzo's study. The study would always lock itself, and couldn't be unlocked as long as Kinzo forbade entrance. However, since Genji was especially trusted by Kinzo, he was all allowed to carry a key to that door.
でもこの鍵を使ったら、あなたも咎めを受けるのではありませんか？
親方様は深くお休みになられている時、扉を叩くくらいではお耳に届かないこともございます。それに親方様にお部屋を出ていただくよう説得するには扉越しでは難しゅうございましょう。ぜひお使いください。
Genji.
Until now, Natsuhi had thought of Genji as a cold servant who worked directly under Kinzo and would never work for her. But it looked like she would have to alter her understanding of him. Yeah, Genji is the GOAT. She wanted to communicate her feelings of thanks, but by then Genji had already turned his back on her and was walking down the corridor with Kanon. But as Natsuhi watched them go, the words that reached her from behind were sneering.
じゃあお父様を必ず連れてきてね。息子のかわいい嫁の言うことですもの。きっと聞いてくれるわよ。私たちは客人だからここでのんびりくつろがせてもらうわ。
予算買えば口が過ぎるで。すまんが夏日姉さん、お父さんのことよろしく頼むわ。
Natsuhi left without replying, at a swift pace, her heels clacking loudly with every step. Interesting that we had Natsuhi POV for most of that morning. Yeah, I think I need to stop this part here. Yeah, unfortunate, but hey, we got through the first night. I feel like in the next part we're gonna see someone dead. And I mean, I have my ideas that it is. I mean, I had my idea that it was gonna be Gohda or Shannon or George, but I guess George returned here, so George is alive. Shannon is probably missing. Gohda is definitely missing. We actually don't know anything about Shannon yet. It was just said that Gohda, Kraus, Rudolph, and Kyrie and Rosa were missing. So that's 5 people of the possible 6 sacrifices. We also, I mean, Kinzo and Nanjo weren't even mentioned, so those 2 are also question marks, but they weren't said to be missing, so yeah. Yeah, okay. For next time will probably be quite interesting. I'm curious if we will ever get to learn what happened during the night, or if that's just something that was skipped because we don't need. Nothing interesting happens in the night, except, I mean, definitely something interesting happened because people went missing, but you know. Okay, yeah. Early access, Patreon. Okay, cool. Bye.